Undercover owner walks into his own car dealership, stops cold when he hears a salesman lying. It was a quiet Tuesday morning when the owner of one of the biggest car dealership chains in the city decided to do something unusual. His name was Mr. Harris. People in the business world knew him as a sharp, wealthy, and respected man who had built his empire from almost nothing. He had started with a single small dealership many years ago, and through hard work and discipline, he had expanded into more than a dozen successful locations. His name carried weight in the automotive industry. But on this morning, Mr. Harris wasn't interested in showing his power, his expensive suits, or his luxury cars. Instead, he wanted to see what was happening inside his dealership when no one knew he was the boss. For weeks, he had been hearing whispers. Some customers had quietly written emails, saying they felt pressured by certain salesmen. A few mentioned that the promises they were given didn't match what was written in the contracts. Mr. Harris couldn't ignore those words. He believed that his business should be built on trust, not on tricks. And yet, he couldn't just rely on reports from managers, because sometimes managers only told him what they thought he wanted to hear. If he truly wanted to see the truth, he needed to see it with his own eyes. So, that morning, Mr. Harris left his mansion without his driver. He wore a plain jacket, jeans, and an old pair of sneakers. Instead of taking one of his luxury vehicles, he drove a 10-year-old sedan that he kept in his garage. The car had scratches on the side and a faint noise in the engine, but that was exactly what he wanted. He didn't want anyone to guess his real identity. He wanted to blend in, to look like an ordinary customer who had saved money and was finally ready to buy a newer car. As he pulled into the dealership lot, he parked among the rows of shiny cars, sedans, SUVs, and trucks, all lined up with polished paint that reflected the morning sun. The large glass showroom stood tall in front of him, with bright banners that said "Best Deals of the Month," and "Drive Home Today." The place looked professional and welcoming, just the way he had always imagined when he first started his business years ago. But Mr. Harris knew looks could be deceiving. He stepped out of his old sedan, locked it, and walked toward the main entrance. For a moment, he felt a strange mix of pride and nervousness. Pride, because this was his creation, his company, his name above the doors. Nervousness, because he didn't know what he was about to discover. Would his employees live up to the values he believed in? Or had greed and carelessness taken over while he wasn't looking? Inside, the air smelled faintly of new leather and fresh paint. Bright lights shone above the cars that sparkled under the ceiling. Large posters displayed happy families driving off in their new vehicles. A young receptionist at the front desk glanced at him quickly but didn't offer a greeting. She went back to scrolling on her phone, as though he wasn't important. Mr. Harris quietly noted that down in his mind. He didn't show any reaction, but deep inside, he felt a small disappointment. A customer walking into a showroom should feel welcome immediately. He wandered past the reception and into the main floor, pretending to be interested in the cars. Around him, salesmen were chatting in groups. A few laughed loudly at some private joke, while others leaned against cars, waiting for someone to approach them. Nobody noticed him at first. Mr. Harris walked slowly, touching the smooth surface of a black SUV and peeking through the window of a red sedan. Still, no one came forward to ask if he needed help. Finally, after several minutes, a salesman glanced at him and started walking his way. The man was tall, dressed neatly in a gray suit, with a practiced smile on his face. "Good morning, sir," the salesman said, his voice smooth. "Looking for something new today?" Mr. Harris nodded casually, keeping his voice calm and ordinary. "Just browsing. Thinking about trading in my old car for something reliable." The salesman's eyes lit up immediately. He had the look of someone who saw an opportunity. He began talking quickly, describing deals and special financing options. His tone was friendly, but a little too eager. Mr. Harris stayed quiet, letting him talk, letting him reveal what kind of salesman he really was. As he listened, Mr. Harris thought about the long journey that had brought him here. Years ago, when he was just a young man starting out, he had promised himself never to cheat a customer. He had once been tricked by a dishonest seller when buying his very first car, and he remembered how painful that felt. That memory had shaped his entire career. He wanted his dealerships to be different, to be places where people felt safe and respected. That was why hearing rumors of dishonesty had troubled him so deeply. Now, standing here undercover, he wondered if those rumors were true. The salesman kept pointing to shiny cars, using big words like best deal in the city and limited time offer. He barely asked any questions about what Mr. Harris really needed, whether he drove long distances, or if he had a family. It was all about pushing a sale, not building trust. Mr. Harris took mental notes of every detail. The way the receptionist ignored him, the way the salesman spoke too fast, the lack of genuine interest in the customer's needs. He felt his chest grow heavy with concern. If this was how he, the undercover boss, was being treated, how were ordinary people being treated every day? He walked with the salesman toward a row of used cars, pretending to be curious. His eyes scanned the price tags, but his mind was sharp, listening to every word. He wanted to catch the truth or the lies that might come next. At that moment, Mr. Harris wasn't the wealthy owner of a dealership empire. He wasn't the man with a big house, private meetings, and powerful connections. He was just another ordinary customer walking through the doors, hoping to buy a car. And that was exactly how he wanted it. Only by hiding his identity could he uncover the real behavior of his staff. What he didn't know yet was that the next words he was about to hear from the salesman would stop him cold. They would not only confirm his fears but also test his patience, his values, and his leadership. The undercover mission he started that morning was about to change everything for him, for his staff, and for the dealership's future. The salesman led Mr. Harris across the bright showroom floor, his polished shoes clicking against the shiny tiles. His name tag read Carl, and he carried himself with the kind of confidence that came from years of practice. Carl had a rehearsed smile, a tone that was charming but sharp, and eyes that constantly scanned the customer, as though measuring how much money could be made. "Sir, you came on the perfect day," Carl said warmly. "We've got some unbelievable deals going on right now. You'll never see prices like these again." Mr. Harris nodded slowly, keeping his expression neutral. He wanted to appear like an everyday man who didn't know much about cars, someone who could be easily swayed by promises. Inside, however, he was studying Carl carefully, his body language, his words, and even the pauses in his speech. Every small detail mattered. The salesman stopped in front of a silver sedan parked neatly under the lights. He tapped the roof proudly. "This beauty right here is one of our top sellers. Reliable, excellent mileage, clean history. One owner, barely driven. Perfect for someone like you." Mr. Harris bent down, peered through the window, and slowly ran his fingers along the door handle. He already knew this particular car's story. It wasn't a single-owner vehicle. He had read the report months earlier. It had been leased to a ride-share company for 3 years, driven by multiple drivers, and returned with worn tires and several repairs. Hearing Carl describe it as barely driven made his stomach tighten, but he kept calm. He didn't want to reveal himself just yet. "Really?" Mr. Harris asked casually, pretending to be impressed. "It looks nice. So, it hasn't been in any accidents?" Carl shook his head with absolute certainty. "Not at all. Clean record. It's practically brand new." Inside, Mr. Harris sighed silently. He knew this was untrue. The car had been in 2 minor accidents, nothing dangerous, but still important details any honest salesman should reveal. Yet here was Carl, speaking as if the car's history had been spotless. The undercover owner followed along, letting Carl continue his show. As they walked to another car, Mr. Harris noticed more of the dealership's atmosphere. A young couple stood near an SUV, looking confused as another salesman pressured them with paperwork. Across the room, an elderly man sat waiting for someone to help, but no one seemed in a hurry to approach him. The receptionist still sat at her desk, eyes fixed on her phone. Mr. Harris felt a heaviness settle in his chest. He had built this company on values of fairness and respect. Yet, in this moment, the place didn't feel like his dream. It felt like a store where people were being pushed into deals they didn't fully understand. Carl, unaware of the storm brewing inside his customer's mind, kept talking with energy. "We have excellent financing options, sir. Low interest rates, no extra fees. You could drive home today with just a small down payment." Mr. Harris tilted his head. "No extra fees," he repeated softly. "None at all," Carl replied, smiling widely. "What you see is what you pay." Again, Mr. Harris recognized the trick. Every dealership had processing fees, registration costs, and add-ons. To claim there were no extra fees was simply not true. He wondered how many ordinary buyers had believed these words and later found themselves facing bills hundreds of dollars higher than expected. The Undercover owner asked another question. "And what about warranty? Does this come with one?" Carl nodded quickly. "Of course. A full warranty, 3 years, covers everything. You won't have to worry about a single thing." Mr. Harris narrowed his eyes slightly but kept his tone light. He knew the truth: the standard warranty only covered the engine and a few parts. It definitely did not cover everything. The lies were stacking up like cards in a house of deceit, each one shaking his faith in the staff he trusted. As they moved through the rows, Mr. Harris continued to play his role. He asked simple questions, the kind any careful buyer would ask. With each answer, Carl's words grew more exaggerated. He promised perfect histories, flawless engines, and deals that sounded too good to be true. But the more Carl spoke, the more Mr. Harris thought about the ordinary families who came into his dealerships every day. Some worked hard for months, even years, just to save enough for a car. They placed their trust in his company, believing they were treated honestly. And here was one of his employees breaking that trust in the most careless way. Mr. Harris's mind drifted back to his younger days. He remembered being in his 20s, saving every dollar to buy his first car. The salesman back then had tricked him, hiding details and rushing him into signing papers. The disappointment had stayed with him for years. That memory was why he had promised never to allow dishonesty in his business. Yet here he was, decades later, hearing the same kind of lies inside his very own dealership. He stayed silent, but inside he was deeply troubled. If Carl was this comfortable lying to him, how many times had he lied to others? Was this behavior rare, or had it spread among more of his staff? Was dishonesty becoming a culture here? The questions circled in his head like storm clouds. As they neared the back of the showroom, Carl leaned closer and lowered his voice, as if sharing a secret. "Listen, sir. If you're serious, I can get you an even better deal. But you'd need to sign today. Tomorrow, the price might not be the same. These cars are moving fast." Mr. Harris felt his heart tighten. It was the classic high-pressure tactic: push the customer into signing quickly, leaving them no time to think or compare. He knew this game well. It wasn't just dishonest, it was manipulative. For the first time, Mr. Harris's face hardened slightly. He straightened his back, stood tall, and looked directly into Carl's eyes. The salesman mistook it for hesitation and doubled down. "Trust me, sir," Carl said smoothly. "I've been in this business for years. I wouldn't lie to you. This car is perfect. If you don't take it now, someone else will. You don't want to miss this chance." The words echoed in Mr. Harris's ears. "I wouldn't lie to you." It was almost unbearable. He knew Carl was lying, not once, but several times in the past few minutes. He wanted to stop the act right there, to tell Carl exactly who he was. But he controlled his temper. Not yet. He needed to see just how far Carl was willing to go. He glanced around the room once more. Other customers were listening. Some looked uneasy, some overwhelmed. It wasn't just him who was seeing these tactics, it was happening openly in the showroom. And the thought struck him like a sharp blade: if customers left this place feeling cheated, the reputation he had built for years could crumble overnight. Mr. Harris forced a polite smile. "Interesting," he said softly. "Very interesting." Carl clapped his hands once. "So, should I get the paperwork started?" But Mr. Harris didn't answer right away. Inside, he was boiling with both anger and sadness. He had hoped to find honesty in his staff. Instead, he was standing face to face with a salesman who cared only about closing a deal, no matter the truth. And just as he was about to respond, Carl made one more bold claim, a lie so big, so shameless, that it stopped Mr. Harris cold. The undercover owner felt his heart pound. This was the moment he had been dreading and waiting for. Mr. Harris stood there, hands resting lightly in his jacket pockets, as Carl, the salesman, leaned in closer. The man lowered his voice, as though sharing a secret that no one else should hear. "This car," Carl said, pointing to the silver sedan again, "has only ever had one careful owner. A family man who barely drove it. Mostly used for weekends. It's as clean as you'll ever find. No scratches, no problems, nothing hidden." The words struck Mr. Harris like a sudden clap of thunder. He stopped cold, his footsteps halting mid-step. He blinked slowly, replaying the sentence in his mind. One careful owner. Barely driven. No problems. Mr. Harris knew the truth. This car had been through far more than Carl was admitting. He had seen the file himself. It had been rented out to a ride-share company, driven by dozens of different people, used daily for long hours, and repaired multiple times after small accidents. The odometer had been rolled back before arriving at the lot. The records were crystal clear. And yet here was Carl, telling bold lies with such ease, as if dishonesty was second nature to him. For a moment, Mr. Harris felt his chest tighten. He wasn't only shocked, he was disappointed, deeply, painfully disappointed. He had trusted his managers to hire and train people who valued honesty. He had built this business to stand for fairness. And now, in his very own dealership, he was hearing the kind of lies he had sworn would never exist under his name. He kept his expression calm, but his mind was racing. If Carl can lie so easily to me, how many families, how many young couples, how many elderly buyers has he fooled already? How many have gone home believing his words, only to later discover they were cheated? Mr. Harris swallowed slowly, steadying himself. He asked, in a casual tone, "One owner, you said?" Carl nodded quickly, his smile wide. "Yes, sir. Just one. A gentleman who treated it like his baby. You won't find a car in better shape." Mr. Harris's eyes darkened, though he didn't let it show too strongly. "That's good to know," he murmured, playing along. The salesman thought he had convinced his customer. Encouraged, Carl walked around the car, patting the hood, praising its design, and pointing out small details. "Look at the shine, sir. You won't find another deal like this anywhere. I promise you. If I were you, I wouldn't wait. This car could be gone by the end of the day." As Mr. Harris listened, his heart grew heavier. Each word was another brick on a wall of dishonesty. He thought about the trust customers placed in his company. People walked in expecting fairness. They spent their hard-earned money, sometimes their entire savings, on vehicles. And here was one of his own employees breaking that trust openly. A family walked past at that moment, a mother, father, and their teenage daughter. The father stopped briefly near another car, and a different salesman swooped in quickly, speaking with the same rushed, pushy tone that Carl was using. Mr. Harris noticed how uncomfortable the family looked, exchanging nervous glances as the salesman pushed them toward signing papers. It was all too clear now. Something was wrong with the culture in this dealership. And if it was happening here, could it also be happening at his other locations? The thought made him uneasy. Carl leaned closer again. "Sir, let me be honest with you," he whispered. "If you don't take this car today, I can't promise it'll still be here tomorrow. People are lining up for this deal." Mr. Harris tilted his head. His voice was calm, but inside he was boiling. "And you're sure it's never been in an accident?" "Never," Carl replied firmly, not even blinking. That was it. The final confirmation. Mr. Harris knew for a fact that this car had been in at least 2 accidents. Minor, yes, but still accidents, events that a responsible salesman would always disclose. Mr. Harris's lips tightened, but he kept his composure. He wanted to see just how far Carl was willing to go, how much deeper into lies he would sink. So he asked another question. "Can I see the service records?" Carl hesitated for a fraction of a second before replying. "Of course, but I can assure you it's all clean. The paperwork might take some time to pull up, but trust me, I wouldn't lie to you." Those words again, "I wouldn't lie to you." Mr. Harris's heart sank. The man was lying to his face, repeating the very promise he was breaking. And yet, other customers in the showroom seemed to be listening. If this was what they heard, they too might believe it. That thought made Mr. Harris's disappointment turn into determination. Something had to change. He pretended to consider the offer, pacing slowly around the car, his eyes on the polished surface but his mind elsewhere. Each step reminded him of his father's old words, "A man's word is worth more than gold." Once you lose trust, you lose everything. Mr. Harris had built his empire on trust. Now, trust was being broken in his very own building. He turned back to Carl. "So you're saying, absolutely no problems, no accidents, one owner, perfect warranty, no hidden fees?" Carl nodded eagerly. "Exactly, sir. Exactly." Mr. Harris let the silence hang for a moment. He looked straight into Carl's eyes. The salesman mistook it for hesitation and added more pressure. "Sir, I want to help you. I can even throw in a free maintenance package. But you'd have to sign today. This car won't last." Mr. Harris inhaled slowly. His patience was wearing thin. He thought about the couple across the room, still being pressured. He thought about the elderly man waiting without help. He thought about the receptionist, uninterested in greeting customers. This wasn't the dealership he had dreamed of. He imagined the hundreds of families who had trusted his company name painted above the showroom doors. They had come here because they believed in honesty. They believed they wouldn't be cheated. And now, he was standing face to face with dishonesty itself. His jaw tightened slightly, but he forced a smile. "Interesting," he said quietly, almost to himself. Carl smiled even wider, thinking he had won. "So, shall we start the paperwork?" But Mr. Harris didn't move. His mind was racing. He knew what he had to do. This wasn't just about one car, or one salesman. It was about the entire heart of his company. If he didn't act now, dishonesty would spread further. If he didn't stop this here, his entire empire could lose the trust it had built for decades. The undercover mission had reached its turning point. He had seen enough lies, enough tricks. The time for pretending was almost over. Mr. Harris's hand brushed against the hood of the car one last time. His eyes scanned the room, taking in every detail: the nervous family, the waiting old man, the distracted receptionist, and the other salesman pushing papers. He felt the weight of leadership settle firmly on his shoulders. And as Carl's eager smile lingered, Mr. Harris finally made up his mind. The truth was about to come out. The salesman had no idea who he was talking to, and no idea how much his lies were about to cost him. Mr. Harris stood silently for a moment, his hand resting on the hood of the car, his eyes locked on Carl's eager face. The salesman thought he had nearly closed the deal. He leaned forward, his smile wide, papers ready in his hand. "Sir, this is the best decision you'll ever make. Trust me, you'll be driving home happy today." But Mr. Harris had reached his limit. He had listened long enough, allowed enough lies to spill from this salesman's mouth. Now, the moment had come, the moment when masks would fall, and the truth would be laid bare. He slowly straightened his back, pulling his hands from his jacket pockets. His voice, calm yet firm, cut through the salesman's words. "Do you always talk to customers this way?" Carl blinked, caught off guard. "This way? I'm just trying to give you the best deal, sir." Mr. Harris tilted his head slightly, his eyes sharp. "The best deal? Or the fastest sale?" The room seemed to grow quieter. Nearby, the young couple negotiating an SUV paused, their eyes turning toward the exchange. The elderly man waiting in the corner looked up from his seat. Even the group of salesmen joking near the desk stopped their laughter and glanced over. Something about Mr. Harris's tone commanded attention. Carl shifted uncomfortably, his practiced smile flickering for the first time. "I'm not sure I understand what you mean, sir. I'm only here to help you." Mr. Harris's lips pressed into a thin line. He had seen enough. His patience, though steady, had run out. Slowly, he reached up, removed the cap he had been wearing to look ordinary, and set it aside on the hood of the car. The fluorescent lights above reflected off his neatly combed gray hair. Then, he slipped off the simple glasses he had been wearing. It was a small change in appearance, but the effect was powerful. His face, sharp and recognizable to anyone who paid attention to company meetings, charity events, or local news, was now visible. Carl's eyes widened. His mouth opened slightly, though no words came out. A faint nervous laugh escaped him. "Wait, you're..." Mr. Harris's calm voice finished the sentence for him. "I'm the owner of this dealership. My name is on that building. And I've been standing here, listening to every lie you've told me." The silence that followed was heavy, almost unbearable. Every employee froze in place. The receptionist finally set down her phone. Customers turned fully now, whispering to one another. The atmosphere in the showroom had changed completely. Carl's face turned pale. Beads of sweat appeared on his forehead. He stammered, Sir, I didn't mean. I was just trying to," but Mr. Harris raised a hand, silencing him. His eyes were steady, his voice calm yet filled with authority. "Do not say another word unless it's the truth. You told me this car had one owner. That was a lie. You told me it was never in an accident. Another lie. You told me there were no hidden fees, and that the warranty covers everything. More lies. I know this car's full history. I know every accident, every repair, every mile. And you still looked me in the eye and lied." Carl swallowed hard, his body stiff as though trapped. The confident salesman who had pushed so aggressively just moments earlier now looked like a cornered man with nowhere to escape. Mr. Harris took a slow breath. He wasn't shouting. He didn't need to. His calmness made his words even more powerful. "Do you know what customers bring into this showroom when they walk through those doors? Trust. They come here because they believe in my company's name. They believe they will be treated fairly. And today, you showed me how easily that trust is broken." The young couple with the SUV nodded silently, as though agreeing. The elderly man leaned forward, his face bright with interest. Every word echoed across the wide showroom. Carl finally tried to speak, his voice weak. I was just trying to meet my targets. It's not what it looks like. Mr. Harris's eyes narrowed. Not what it looks like. I've been standing here for over 30 minutes. I've heard everything with my own ears. You didn't ask me a single question about what I actually needed. You didn't care about what kind of car would fit my life. All you cared about was closing a sale, even if it meant lying. Do you know what that means, Carl? It means you've not only failed this customer, you've failed this company. Carl's shoulders slumped. The weight of his boss's words pressed down like stone. His voice broke. Please, sir, I can explain, but Mr. Harris shook his head firmly. No explanations. The truth doesn't need excuses. The silence deepened. Even the sound of the air conditioner seemed distant. Everyone waited to see what would happen next. Mr. Harris turned his gaze slowly across the room, taking in all the staff, one by one. Some stood frozen in guilt, others in fear. I built this business on honesty, he said, his voice carrying strength. I started with nothing. And I promised myself that no customer would ever feel cheated here. Yet today, I walked in undercover, and what did I see? A receptionist who ignored me. Salesmen laughing instead of helping. And a salesman who lied openly, thinking no one would notice. This is not the company I built. This is not the vision I had. The words hit hard. Some employees lowered their heads in shame. Mr. Harris returned his gaze to Carl. His tone was final, leaving no room for argument. Carl, you are finished here. Collect your things and leave. Today. The salesman's face crumbled. His knees seemed weak. Please, sir, just one more chance. Mr. Harris's eyes were unwavering. You had many chances. Every customer who walked through those doors was a chance. Every time you opened your mouth, you had the choice to tell the truth. And you chose lies. I cannot allow you to cheat people under my roof. Leave. Carl, defeated, lowered his head. Slowly, he stepped back, the papers in his hand trembling, and walked toward the exit. The showroom remained silent, every eye following his every step until he was gone. Once the door closed behind him, Mr. Harris turned back to the rest of the staff. His voice softened, but it still carried weight. Let today be a lesson. This company does not stand on shiny cars or big signs. It stands on trust. And if we lose that trust, we lose everything. I will not allow one dishonest salesman to ruin what I've spent years building. From this moment forward, things will change. We will treat every customer with honesty, respect, and care. Or else you will not work here. A murmur of agreement spread quietly among the staff. The young couple whispered to each other, visibly relieved. The elderly man gave a slow nod, as though silently thanking him. Mr. Harris then looked toward the customers directly. To those of you here today, he said, I apologize. You should never have had to witness dishonesty in this showroom. I give you my word, things will be different. From this moment on, what we promise is what you will get. The customers nodded, some even smiling. They could see the sincerity in his face. The atmosphere of the showroom had changed completely. Fear and dishonesty were gone. In their place was a new sense of seriousness, but also hope. The employees knew their boss had seen everything. They knew he cared enough to show up in person, undercover, to protect the values of his company. For Mr. Harris, the moment was bittersweet. He had uncovered the truth, yes. But it had come with pain of knowing trust had been broken under his own name. Yet, it also gave him strength, because he now had the chance to rebuild, to remind his staff and his customers why his dealerships existed in the first place. He looked once more around the room, then quietly picked up his cap from the hood of the car. Now, he said firmly, Let's get back to doing what we're supposed to do, serving people with honesty. The staff slowly began to move again, this time with more care in their voices and respect in their faces. And as Mr. Harris stood in the middle of his showroom, no longer undercover but fully himself, he knew the hardest part was over. The lies had been exposed. The truth had been spoken. But the work to rebuild trust had only just begun. The door of the showroom closed behind Carl, and the sound of his footsteps faded away into silence. For a few moments, nobody in the dealership moved. Employees stood frozen, their eyes shifting nervously. Customers whispered among themselves, still surprised by what they had just witnessed. Mr. Harris remained standing near the silver sedan, calm and steady, though inside his heart was heavy. This was his business. His name was on every sign, every advertisement, every billboard. For years, people had trusted him because they believed his dealerships were different, that here, unlike in so many other places, they would be treated fairly. And yet, today he had seen the opposite. Lies had been told freely, customers had been pressured, and employees had grown careless. But instead of letting sadness control him, Mr. Harris knew what he had to do. This was not the end, it was a turning point. He stepped forward, his voice strong but not angry. "Everyone, gather around," he said. His tone left no room for hesitation. Slowly, the salesmen walked toward him, their laughter gone, replaced with uneasy silence. The receptionist put away her phone and stood up. Even the mechanics from the service department, curious about what was happening, peeked out from the back. Customers also moved closer, some standing beside the cars they had been looking at. When the group had formed, Mr. Harris looked around at each face. He wasn't just addressing employees, he was addressing a family that had forgotten its values. "I built this company on one promise," he began. "That we would always treat people with honesty and respect. When a customer walks through these doors, they should feel safe. They should feel like we are here to help, not to trick. But today, I saw something else. I saw a salesman lie again and again, without hesitation. I saw laughter when there should have been service. I saw customers waiting while no one cared enough to help." His words were firm but not shouted. They carried a quiet weight that pressed on every heart. The employees lowered their heads. "This cannot continue," Mr. Harris said. "If we keep lying, if we keep treating people this way, we will lose everything. A business without trust is no business at all. And I will never allow this company to stand on dishonesty." The room remained silent. Some staff shifted uncomfortably, realizing how far they had drifted from the values they had promised to follow. Mr. Harris then turned his gaze to the customers. "To those of you here today," he said gently, "I owe you an apology. You came to this showroom expecting to be treated fairly. Instead, you saw something that never should have happened. I want you to know that what you witnessed will not be ignored. This moment will change how this dealership runs." The young couple by the SUV nodded, relief softening their worried faces. The elderly man in the corner gave a small smile, as though reassured that his time had not been wasted. Mr. Harris straightened his shoulders. "From today onward, things will be different. Every car sold here will be matched with full, honest information. If a car has been in an accident, the customer will know. If there are fees, the customer will know before they sign. There will be no more tricks, no more pressure, no more empty promises. Only honesty." He paused, letting the words sink in. The employees shifted, glancing at one another. They knew this was not just a speech, it was a new beginning. Mr. Harris continued, his voice calm but filled with determination. "I will personally make sure every employee receives proper training again. We will rebuild trust, even if it takes time. And let me be clear, anyone who cannot work with honesty has no place here. If you think you can fool customers, if you think you can hide the truth, you will be gone." Just like the man who walked out today. The silence in the room was broken by a soft murmur of agreement. Some employees, though embarrassed, felt grateful. Deep inside, many of them had known things were not right. Now they saw their leader was serious about fixing it. Mr. Harris then walked over to the receptionist. She stood nervously, her hands fidgeting. He looked at her kindly but firmly. "Every person who walks through these doors deserves a greeting," he said. "From now on, no one should ever feel invisible here. Do you understand?" She nodded quickly, her face flushed. "Yes, sir. I understand." Then he turned to the rest of the staff. "From this moment, I want every single customer treated as though they were family. Not just another sale, not just a number. A family member. Ask them what they need. Listen to them. Guide them. That is what will make us different." One of the younger salesmen, his voice trembling, spoke up. "Sir, I want to do better. I don't want to lose this job, but I also don't want to work in a place where customers feel cheated. I'll follow your words." Others nodded quietly in agreement. It was clear that Carl had not been the only one tempted by shortcuts, but seeing him fired so swiftly, and hearing their boss speak with such honesty, had shaken them awake. Mr. Harris softened his tone now, though his eyes remained serious. "I believe in second chances. Everyone here still has one. But that chance only exists if you change, starting today." Then, to show he meant what he said, Mr. Harris turned back to the customers. He walked up to the elderly man who had been sitting alone. "Sir, I saw you waiting. I apologize you were ignored. Tell me, what kind of car are you looking for?" The old man looked surprised. I I was just hoping for something small, reliable, not too expensive. Something easy for me to drive." Mr. Harris smiled warmly. "Then that is exactly what we'll find for you. No lies, no pressure, no hidden costs. I'll make sure of it myself." The man's eyes lit up with gratitude. "Thank you," he whispered. Then Mr. Harris turned to the young couple with the SUV. "And you," he said kindly. "I heard how you were being pressured. That will not happen again. You will receive every detail, every option, without tricks. If this SUV is right for you, you'll know it. And if it isn't, no one will force you." The couple exchanged glances and smiled, clearly relieved. By now, the atmosphere in the showroom had changed completely. Where there had been fear and dishonesty, now there was hope and determination. Employees straightened their posture, ready to begin again. Customers relaxed, their trust slowly returning. Mr. Harris walked back to the center of the showroom, his voice strong once more. "Remember this day," he told everyone. "Because this is the day we return to who we truly are. A dealership built on trust. A place where honesty is worth more than any sale. That is the only way forward." Applause broke out, not loud, but steady. It came first from the customers, then from the staff. It wasn't applause for a speech, it was applause for truth. As the day continued, Mr. Harris stayed in the dealership. He walked with customers, answered their questions, and guided his staff. He showed them by example how to listen, how to explain, how to build trust with small acts of care. Slowly, the mood brightened. Deals were made, but they were made honestly, with transparency. When evening came and the showroom lights dimmed, Mr. Harris finally walked out to his old sedan. He placed his cap back on his head and paused to look at the glowing sign above the building, his name, shining bright. For the first time in a long while, he felt that name truly meant something again. He knew there was much work ahead. Training, rebuilding, earning back the trust of every customer who had felt cheated. But he was ready. Today had been painful, but it had also been necessary. It was the reminder that success is not measured by sales alone, it is measured by trust, by honesty, by the way people feel when they leave. As he drove away in his old car, Mr. Harris allowed himself a small smile. The dealership would rise again not because of shiny cars, but because of truth. And that was worth more than anything money could buy.